Okay, here we are.
Hey
Good
Gideon,
to
how
see
are
you,
you, man?
Steven. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you? We saw each other a couple of days ago, so fill me in on what's going on with you.
Oh, the same old, as it always is. I'm just working on the show and doing everything that I can to keep it going. Still drinking. That's big thing. That's probably the best thing going right now. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, it's the only cure for COVID at the moment, right?
It's the only cure for COVID, actually. We have a very good show today. Welcome, everyone, to the Dabi and Costello, the misadventures of two singers of dubious sobriety on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
You too, Gideon. So what's going on? What do you want to start out with today? We have a great show, and I want to get to our guest because our guest
Yeah.
it's very exciting to have him today, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let's do some housekeeping. Let's talk about what's been going on.
There has been a few things going on, unfortunately and fortunately. First of all, I don't know if you know this. Let's be safe. Chicago and Baltimore. There was a massive factory explosion in Baltimore today. Our friends, our last week's guest, Rachel, is right outside Baltimore. And everyone, her family's fine. But Chicago just had a horrible tornado, like 100-mile-an-hour winds, just now.
Just now, it's
Like,
funny.
yeah, just like 30 minutes ago.
It's funny you say that. I was like maybe an hour ago. I was just talking to our buddy Francisco Miliotto, who's on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and in the middle of our conversation, he's just like, "Wow!" All of a sudden, it just got really bad. The wind was picking up. The rain was picking up, and I was like, "Oh, I'll let you go." And his power went out, everything, and I didn't realize a tornado just happened.
Oh yeah. It is bad. It is really bad. And now we hear from our dear friend William, who's here. Good to see you, William. Yeah, no, it's really bad. A friend of mine told me. A friend of mine, same name as my sister Naomi, told me that her patio furniture is gone, and she has no idea where it is. Imagine you're hiding in your house, like, okay, it's good, and you go outside and you have no idea where your furniture is. That's what happened.
Unbelievable. So I hope everyone in Chicago and Baltimore is safe. Our friends are out there. If you happen to be watching the show and you're in Chicago or Baltimore, please keep us posted and updated on what's going on, and that'd be great. That's crazy. I mean, what else can 2020 bring us?
Oh, a lot of stuff. We'll get to that. We'll get to that, I'm sure, when we get a chance. What I said that we should start doing like a topic a little bit before we bring in our illustrious guest. And one of the things that I always get asked from my students and from people is, when we talk about being sick, not with COVID, God forbid, but being sick and singing under those circumstances, and the experiences that you've had. And the big one is strategies, right? I remember our dear friend who we were with in Dallas, of course, Mr. Corey Kreider, would literally stomp on the floor for notes that he needed help with when he said he wasn't feeling well. But maybe something a little more tactile than that. Do you have any strategies for we're not talking about anything serious, obviously, God forbid, but how many performances have you ever had to cancel because of being cold? I personally have not ever had to cancel because of it cold or something to that effect. But what are your experiences with that?
In my experience, I don't cancel when I have a cold, but I have canceled before if it was something more serious. If as long as it's not in my throat and on my vocal cord, you can sing through it. It's not a great sensation. It's not a fun sensation whatsoever. But I mean, if I wake up, and you usually know before you go to bed, like, oh, something's a little off. Maybe the day before, you tend to get something. You feel something in your nose, maybe a little bit in your throat, but not too much. And then the next morning, I make sure I wake up early if I have a show that day. And I wake up, I just vocalize slightly, just like do like some humming some scales, humming exercises, just to see where the movement is and see if I'm getting enough vibration, if there's any junk on it. And if there is, I'll shut it off. I'll wake up, I'll have my coffee, and then I'll get a shower, maybe steam a little bit. And then throughout the day, slightly, just keep gradually warming up, gradually slowing. Don't flex your top until you feel like you have full flexibility with it. And then it really is. It's just trying to stay focused the entire time and knowing that as long as your chords are okay and as long as you have perfect movement and perfect closure in your chords, it shouldn't really affect you that much. It's just going to suck. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think if I'm sick, give it a little more. When I think completely the opposite. If I'm sick, I back off a little bit because you can't really tell. As you know, as a singer, you can't hear your own sound, right?
No, that's always
know
great.
what feels good. So that's when you have to just rely on sensation and just trusting your technique. Then again, if you don't have a technique before you're sick, you probably shouldn't have been on stage to begin with. So
that's certainly true. I guess I should have to caveat to say I'm not a medical doctor, certainly not, and we're not giving medical advice. I'll tell you what my ENT, who is actually a medical doctor, recommended always. He just said it's Mucinex, pseudoephedrine, and Tylenol, and those three work together exceedingly well.
really,
And that's has saved my life on multiple occasions, and even while singing with you, in fact, it's saved me on multiple occasions, and it's good stuff.
I find
that's the experience from that.
I find Mucinex only helps you if you've got some sort of phlegm or some sort of buildup.
Yeah.
I try not to take any kind of like Sudafed or anything like that because it has like a little almost like a steroid feeling in it. I don't like that at all. And I just drink a lot of water, a lot of warm water. Maybe put some lemon in it, not too much because you don't want to dry yourself out. I also find Mucinex dries me out a little too much.
Yeah.
So, and then here's the other thing too. If you're really sick, the companies, and maybe me and Ian can talk about this when we bring them on.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really sick, the company would appreciate it if you gave them a lot of notice. And if you don't think you can finish a show, don't start it.
No, that's certainly true. That's always a really harrowing decision to make, especially, I mean, I haven't had to make that decision in a show, thank God, but certain auditions I've certainly had to make that decision, and that's a real heartbreaker when you know you're not going to be able to do that audition for another year, maybe. I mean, that sucks. It's like missing the Olympics. It feels like missing the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I blew, and now I got to wait 4 years for my next time. I mean, it's a year, but still, you're not getting any younger. You want to make a name for yourself, but I've had to cancel a few auditions, and that just
look, you don't want to hear yourself struggle, right? But the audience really doesn't want to hear you struggle. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to remember you're singing for people that have paid money to see a show. You're singing. I mean, yes, you may disappoint your fans if you're too sick to go on, but you also don't want to go on there and disappoint your fans because you're trying to do something that you physically cannot do at the moment.
I mean, you're talking about decorum, really, decorum for the art form, decorum for the business, and what is expected of us. But so don't if you think you can't deliver, right, don't sing, but try. I guess that's the sort of, I guess it's all individual. For me, I generally like it when I dry myself out if I'm feeling congested. That's what I like it, but I know a lot of people like to feel more lubricated, so to speak. I like to dry it out and then just add something on top of it to make it go. But in any event, shall we move on?
Yeah, should we just bring on our guests? I mean, I'm sure we got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think we should move on.
A lot of stuff to talk to them about.
Absolutely.
Our guest today, very exciting to have him, is Ian Derrer. He's the general director of the Dallas Opera. Ian is one of these guys who is the ideal general director to me. I mean, he was a singer, he was an assistant stage manager, he was a stage manager, he was a director. He worked in the rehearsal department in Chicago Lyric Opera. He also was the general director of Kentucky Opera, and then he became the general director of the Dallas Opera. As I tell everybody that ever asks about him, he's one of my favorite guys in the business, just because he has such compassion for the art form, for the singers, and not just that. He's worked the entire gamut of the rehearsal process, the stage process, and he knows. He's been there, he's done it, he knows. And it's really a great honor for us to have him here today. And here he is, Ian Derrer.
Welcome to the show, Ian.
It's really, really, really great to be here. That's a hell of an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to it or not, but it's wonderful.
Well, now that you're here, are you going to sing a little bit for us?
Oh, no way. No way. You see, I'm electing. I haven't been feeling very well. I've got a little phlegm. I think
it's a good thing we just had a conversation about singing while sick. You can employ the strategies.
I'm telling you, that actually is. I mean, there are so many stories. But I have to agree with you. When you know you're not going to be able to do the things you need to do, just don't do it. But there are so many stories though about singers that they have a cold. They learn how to sing through it. They learn how to do it, and people don't even notice. I mean, what you are experiencing in your own head at that time and what we hear sometimes are completely different, obviously. But one of the things that you may not realize is that when you are sick and you are going easier or you're supporting more, sometimes you sing better. Because you're like, you're zoned in on, I got to be technically correct, and all of a sudden, you give a better performance somehow, some way, even though you think you're compromised a little bit because of a little cold.
Yeah,
Maybe it's resonance. I don't know.
I agree. I find some people's worst performances are when they feel great, because they always want to go the extra mile, and sometimes they get to the point and they're like, oh man, maybe I'm doing a little too much today because I feel so good. And I agree with you. I feel when you're sick, you have to focus more and you have to ease up on the voice. And people don't realize that when you start to ease up on your voice, you start to get more color. You start to get more overtone. You start to get even more squealo. It's really, really crazy. But Ian, we're incredibly excited to have you here today. You've I wanted to ask you a few questions. I guess I'll start with the obvious one. What's it been like for you during this COVID period? Because you run an opera house. Your product is opera, and at the moment we're kind of put on hold. You can't put anything on stage, and it's still trying to figure out the boundaries and the restrictions, and if we are able to come back, how is that going to look, and how we're going to do that. But at the same time, you're now fundraising for a product that you can't show people. So, I mean, it seems like a very hard task for someone in your position.
Well, I'm always busy. I'll put it that way. I'm certainly always busy. But I go back to your first question. How are we doing? How are we dealing with this? I mean, everybody is struggling. I mean, there's no one person that I know that isn't struggling with this. And when you start looking at the performing arts in general, we all it's a daily challenge. I wake up and I try to really assess what the latest knowledge is. Can you make a better decision today because you know something that you didn't know yesterday? Or are you still in a holding pattern? And right now, I feel like we've been in a pretty large holding pattern, waiting to see developments. At the same time, you see what's going on in Europe and the adventurous spirit that they have now to kind of get back into different types of productions. It just makes me long for it all the more to be able to put it on the stage. But the majority of my day, as you say, is spent in dealing with things about safety, thinking about safety. And I don't mean just for what it was going to take to bring a production on the stage, but also what is the safety of my staff? What is the safety of myself? What is the safety of our patrons? How is that journey going to look when they want to come to the Opera House? And are they going to want to be daring enough to come back to the Opera House anytime soon? So there's a hell of a lot of unanswered questions. But the reality is that I think, are forever changed. I think there will be elements of our business that are always going to be now more digitally inclined, not necessarily the traditional track of everything, but there's going to have to be a parallel track of digital offerings and relationships that will develop. I think it's inevitable, and many opera companies were tiptoeing in it to begin with, but now we've been thrust into it.
I mean, that actually brings up a great topic. You guys have launched since COVID started. You've launched the TDO network, which has been very successful for you guys. How does something like that come about? And because there's a lot of things you offer on the TDO network, you offer a range of things for viewers. So you have not only opera singing, but you have health channels, I guess you can say. You have people that are teaching you about daily life and how to keep yourself healthy. And so, I mean, when did you decide to do that? And how did it come about? Because it's really successful.
Well, thank you, and I'm really proud of it. And the actual story about how it came up is pretty simple. And the main ingredient there is to have David Lomeli in your artistic camp. He wasted no time in understanding that we had an opportunity and that we needed to seize that and doing something different. At the same time, we're not a company that has an infrastructure of producing things the way that other companies like the Met or San Francisco or Chicago have in-house. And so for us, it was about trying to find another angle. And so David had been watching what was going on social media, and we responded very quickly thanks to that. And it took us a while to kind of get the construction idea of what the website was going to be like and what the offerings were going to be. But I remember having conversations with David and thinking, we need to think like a channel, and at some point you're going to appeal to somebody that wants TMZ, somebody wants PBS NewsHour, somebody wants to know just the news, and somebody wants to know how to cook. So throw all that together and have a through line of opera and or opera singers, and let's see what happens. But I think the interesting thing too is that I wasn't afraid, and I told David this. I said, we're going to fail. There are going to be things that don't go well. But let's just use it as a bit of R&D and try to really understand what we can tap into. And you'll have successes as surely as you'll have failures, but let's just keep trying. And I think that's been the success of it right now.
Well, it's been. I mean, I was fortunate enough to do a great interview with Emmanuel View,
yeah.
which is great. It's you often have these conversations with your colleagues and conductors, like in rehearsal period, or even like if you're working at Dallas Opera, you have you have your break, and then you'll sit down, you'll talk to Emmanuel about life, you'll talk to him about music and things like that. And it's a really interesting aspect to actually have viewers on that end to see what you're talking about and chatting and hear what you're chatting about, because there's a relationship that you have with your colleagues that isn't expressed in a performance, right? So, I mean, you work with them all the time. You learn things from them. I always say when I'm in a rehearsal process, if I'm doing Bohème for the 19th time, I'm usually doing Bohème with a whole different cast. So I'm learning from my cast and I'm learning from the conductor and changing it. So there's a whole aspect to behind the scenes of opera that people don't get to see all the time that they now see on your channel, because you're having these in-depth conversations with artists and you have, I mean, you just have like a gamut of different people there. When you came to the Dallas Opera, you became one of, I mean, you put it on the map. You guys have put it on the map, your team together, you, David, and Emmanuel. I mean, you've brought in singers that have never been there before, that are on the international scene. You've really made Dallas a stop on the opera map in the United States. Was that something you wanted to do the minute that you came into Dallas? Was it something that you waited to discuss with them, or how did that all come about?
Well, I think, before I went to Kentucky, I was artistic administrator, and that was, so I was already being able to have my hands into the casting pot with Emmanuel in those years, and that's always a great thing. But I was also very cognizant of the fact that we had inherited quite a grand tradition of great singers, as you know, and so I felt a very heavy responsibility to make sure that we were bringing world-class opera all across the board. And David and I, early on, he started in the artistic department, and he was my assistant, believe it or not. And we knew very quickly, because we had actually sung together a long time ago, that we shared the same aesthetic. And Emmanuel and David and I too. I mean, and I think that is, I don't think that that's always the case. And we really don't have to debate about singers or musical skills or aptitude very, very long. We all generally are on the same page. And David himself has the keenest of eyes and ears. Emmanuel is out there all the time, so he's exposed to these new generations. And I too love that aspect of kind of looking out for a kind of a diamond in the rough and seeing what the potential can be. And that's one of the most exciting things, is to see something that perhaps that a singer, maybe they think they're a baritone that probably could be a tenor or mezzo up to dramatic soprano, those kinds of things. And when you're a part of developing somebody's career and helping them change the way that they could see their future, that's incredible. That's really special.
So what is it that you particularly look for our younger singer audience, our singers that are up and coming? You as a general director, when somebody walks into a room and they're standing in front of you and they have maybe two arias that they probably will get to sing to audition for you, what is it that you hone in on? What are your top 5 things that you look for in someone that's auditioning for you?
Well, there are a handful of things, but first of all, I go for beauty of voice, And beauty of voice and actually, the fact that if you sound unique, those two things often are simultaneously enjoyable. I mean, if you have a beautiful voice, often it is a unique voice, and that to me, there's an honesty in what you're hearing, and those two things go together. And if I get those, I'm really interested right off the bat. The second thing that always really is kind of the barometer, I guess you would say, of level of skill and things is language. And there is nothing that really makes it all the more special to me than really being able to understand every word, watching a singer who knows how to finesse the vowels and the consonants to make effect that you can really act with your voice, despite you're standing still in an audition room, but you can still act with your voice. But to boil it down to one thing, all of those things come together, and you hope you get goosebumps. But at the end of the day, I have to believe what you're singing and what you're singing about. And it doesn't ever have to be perfect. I would sacrifice exciting for perfect any day of the week. And I just respond to those moments when you it's authentic, and you know that they're connected to the words, and the voice comes out. It's believing what you're hearing.
I love what you said. You look for, one of the key things is you look for sound and beauty and tone. And I since COVID started, I've been able to work, one-on-one sometimes with some singers, coaching and stuff like that. And that's the one thing that I always say. From the very first note you sing, you have to say something. Like, you have to have a quality about your voice. You have to have security. You have to have the most beautiful tone, and you have to because if you don't have that, you lose the audience. There's no opera in the world where a tenor will come out and sing a high C immediately. There's nothing, like, he doesn't just come on stage and just sing a high C. He comes on and he's singing in his middle voice, most likely. So you want to capture the audience from that first few moments, because if you didn't, you've lost them. There's nothing worse than starting an aria and the audience going, "Oh, this is going to be long." Okay.
And you can tell that the folks that just spend their time worrying about their high notes, and you're like, well, look at how many of those high notes are actually in the score in total. Look at how many of the other notes are in the staff. Those have to be equally as beautiful. Those have to be equally as beautiful and exciting. So I don't know. I love the excitement of a good high note like anybody else. But I mean, the whole thing though has to come together. And if it's not beautiful, you tune out. And if it's not compelling, then you tune out.
Well, yeah, it's funny. And now I'm thinking back, all the productions that I've done in Dallas, they've always been with people that have special voices or beautiful voices. I mean, even like the Carmen, I think, was the most recent one, and you had Stephanie.
Very nice of you to say about me, Stephen. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
Oh yes.
I'm sorry, Stephanie. Yes, she's great though.
No, but like Stephanie, exactly, had a beautiful voice, an expressive singer, and one of those people that could interpret an entire role just with her voice. I mean, she could do it in acting too. But and it was just, oh man, and the whole cast was that way. Even I remember sitting in the first rehearsal and thinking, like, even these smaller parts have great voices. There's just like something special about them, which really brings the show together. It's really incredible, and it's a great experience working for you in Dallas, as Gideon knows as well. What would have been the biggest challenges for you as a general director? I mean, because you're very sensitive to singers, right?
Yeah.
But you also have administrative responsibilities. Oh. So I mean, what are the biggest challenges? Do you ever find yourself you have to compromise? I don't want to say compromise, but do you go for a certain thing? Like if you hear something you like, will you hire them even though knowing that you have to sell production, they may not know them, right? It may be someone that people have never heard, but you think, oh, this person needs to do that. Will you go for the person that you feel is the best, or will you try to find something that will help sell a show?
I think it's a balance. I think there really is. But I mean, there are certain things that you just, there's certain operas you don't do unless you have the right cast. And I would much rather just not do an opera if I can't, see the right group of ingredients drawn together to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And that I think is something that you just feel over time. And we've had casting meetings where David and Emmanuel and I will talk about, repertoire that we'd like to do. And it always starts with, well, let's make a list of repertoire that we'd like to see, but we really want these people involved in it. And if they're not, then we'll rethink something else. And I think that's and that obviously is reflective of our taste, but it also just means that we're not going to do it unless we have the right ingredients. And I think, some of the challenges that you were talking about administratively, that's the interesting thing. I had a lot of experience, have a lot of experience on the production side and artistic administrative side and all of those things, performing when I was younger. But the thing that I lacked before becoming a general director was experience in marketing and development and fundraising. And I was very fortunate in both Kentucky and then Dallas that they knew that right off the bat, and they were willing to work with that and figure out ways to balance while I learned. And I think that that's one of the things about being a general director. I've said before, general directors direct generally. And I think it's better to keep it general. You don't want to get in the weeds of any one particular department too much. I have to resist getting into production and artistic at a lot more in the weeds level than probably most. But I'm really always drawn to what I can learn about marketing and what I can learn about development. And that's been a part of my learning and developing the right staff too, and really relying on staff that has expertise and pulling staff from the recesses of my memories, particularly in Chicago. I think the first thing that you and I did together, I think, was Merry Widows.
Yeah, correct.
That was oh gosh, Gary Griffin and Andriana maybe.
Yeah, it was 2009, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it feels like a lifetime ago.
I know.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was 2009. I remember that production, and it was Adriana Chutchman. It was oh man, who was it?
Roger Honeywell and
Roger Honeywell. That's right, and Liza Futrell. Yeah. And that crazy production where she just came down these gigantic stairs to nowhere.
Oh,
it was a lot of empty space, but yeah, it was a great production. Do you have these backgrounds as a singer, you have these backgrounds as a director. Do you find it hard now in the general director position? Because you come into rehearsals, you watch it, you'll watch run-throughs on stage, and do you find yourself restraining yourself if you see something that doesn't quite work, but you're like, okay, let's see where it goes? Do you find it hard to sit there and not want to fix something, or not want to say, maybe you should try this, or maybe you should think more this way?
Oh, well, I speak my mind. I think I always give the directors benefit of the doubt, and it's always actually much more beneficial for me to go to kind of the last room rehearsals to see how things come together, and hopefully we get a full run through in the room before we go to the stage. I'm present in stage rehearsals, but those first stage rehearsals on stage, dealing with the set and everything, I steer clear. I know that they've got a lot of work to do, and the last thing they need me doing is needling about things that I know that they know about. And I think that I then kind of turn my attention towards fine tuning when we get to the final rehearsals on stage, and really speaking more about lighting, placements of masking, all that kind of stuff, and I get out of the way of the director, and I try to, at least, but and then I find that that's a great opportunity to really start spending time more with singers and saying, how are you doing, how's your pacing, how's this going, all that kind of stuff, and utilize that time with them, because just being in rehearsal, it does me a world of good. I love it. And it's also a great fundraising tool, an opportunity to bring people into those rehearsals, which I love to do. But it also is one of those things that I know that at the same time, a dynamic can change when a general director is in a room for any number of reasons. But I hope that what I'm trying to do in the final rehearsals is provide calm and a sense of leadership that we're going to get through it and all that kind of stuff.
Ian, I had a question with respect to the questions that our chat is happening, our being singers, is with respect to the uncertainty of the business in the current climate going forward. I remember we had a big meeting with everyone on my manager's roster back in March, that they were already announcing cancellations 15 months ahead.
Yeah.
So obviously, like when schools close, right? You know, you have a school closing. It's snowing at 5 a.m. Okay, we can close school, no problem, right? You obviously don't have the luxury to just close up shop, right? The 3 hours before rehearsal starts to say we're canceling. Can you guide us through that process? Because so many singers were like, why are you canceling now? We don't know what's going to be in 4 months. We don't know what's going to be in 2 months. When's the, vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. How far ahead can you make these kinds of decisions, and what goes into that kind of decision-making process?
Well, that's a big question, and the answer is that there are tons of things, and opera is so complex, and it's complex not only because of all the people that it takes to bring together, but it's the timing of things as well. And I wish I could give you a clear answer on when is the right time to make a decision. I think that we're searching for the right time now. And I knew in my heart of hearts that safety was always going to be the guiding force for me. And when do you know if you're going to be able to do something safely or not? And I think that is still, it's out. I mean, the jury's out on how safe you can be right now and what you can do safely. And I think until there is a much clearer picture of what safe performances are, whether that's because people have had a vaccine or because there's a better treatment or because there's an alternative that we haven't even maybe considered, that's always going to be the guiding factor. And the real thing that is a struggle, and I hear you, is how can you make that decision so far down the road? And I think that the true answer of that is that you have to use your gut. And I as somebody that had to live in live theater as a stage manager and assistant director and kind of deal with the changes on the spot as they happen, I don't think I'm any more predisposed to it, but I'm more accustomed to having to make decisions on the fly like that. It's not easy in any way, shape, or form, especially because canceling one night is one thing. Canceling 3 productions is another. But in some ways, when you look at the fact that you have to cancel one production, and if you have multiple productions planned at the same time, it's inevitable that the other 2 would have to fall because of where they're being rehearsed, how they're being rehearsed, not to mention all the challenges that at that time we were having with travel, of course. And that a lot of that stuff is still a major issue then.
But realistically, how late can you wait, for example, right? And how late would you estimate that other houses might be able to? How late can they make that decision? How close to the deadline, so to speak, right? Could you make a call like that? I mean, I'm not privy to the machinations of the unions, of the orchestra, of the stage, of the set, et cetera. So clue us in here, because we're sort of all waiting with bated breath here as to like, when is that like the line?
Well, what I can't do is I cannot give you the answer for every opera company, because every single opera company is so different. And all of the union agreements are different for every opera company, with very few exceptions. And so you have to really understand what those deadlines are before any other consideration. I mean, it's you have to take that into consideration. Some companies are going to have more leeway, some don't have as much. But I think that you have to also keep in mind that what you're doing is you're not also inconveniencing the ensemble that's come together, the cast and the chorus and the orchestra and the stagehands, but you're absolutely inconveniencing your ticket buyers. And that is not an easy thing to do. So you have to keep that in mind over the course of the entire plan, and just know that you're walking that line of not wanting to do it too soon, and certainly not wanting to do it too late.
I think what a lot of people tend to forget is that there is more than just people showing up to rehearsal on day one, putting the show together. There's months and months of preparation that goes in to a show, whether it's bringing a set from another country or bringing a set from somewhere else. And I feel like something in COVID, when you're at the mercy of the governments in some places, which is hard. It's, you don't know, one, if people can get visas in enough time to come if they're coming from another country. You don't know
if the embassy's open.
Absolutely right. You don't even know if how long now it's going to take, like, a set to just maybe travel from another city in order to get it there. And you also, people don't realize you don't want to go to the expense of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, as we're talking about in opera, to ship a set to somewhere, and then, you know what, we have to cancel it after we have that big expenditure. I think you're absolutely right, and I think it is a gut feeling that you have to go by. And then if something opens and you made the decision, it's okay. And I think people understand that more than if everything were all open and it's just like, we don't feel like doing a show. I often think, like, I hear people, how they talk about, they're closing another house. Like, people didn't make that decision lightly. No one is sitting around saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to screw this person and screw this. No one does that. No one with a good heart and conscience does that. Right. They really just want the best for everyone involved. And that is the performers, the stagehands, the administration, the ticket holders, the board members. Everyone wants to make the right decision so everybody has a sense of peace with it and an understanding.
I think that's a lot better said than I did. One of the things, as Stephen was saying, there's a point where the money starts flying out the door on the show, and those are different times for different companies and different productions. But you have to be mindful of that, because you don't want to incur costs that you know that shouldn't be incurred if you can avoid it in the case of something like that.
Mm-hmm. You know, if we can go back for a minute, before we go too far the other way, we were talking before about online streaming becoming a big part of the industry. Now, I'm always concerned, and maybe you can shed some light on this. I'm concerned with, like, people in our industry, for instance, put so much content online on a regular basis. Now, when someone, decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to do a recital from my apartment today, and I'm going to stream it live. Can you talk about how hard it is then, after it's already free online, for someone to then shop that recital, for instance, to a house, or for a house to, hey, can you do the same thing for us, for our subscribers, but now they get it free online? Can you talk to us about if there's too much content out there, and if we should be narrowing it back a little bit? Because if that's where the industry is going, right, you don't want to put too many free things out there that are accessible all the time. That's going to pollute the internet.
Right. Well, I think one of the challenges is that, I think we've seen an unprecedented amount of flood of content that has gone out since COVID, right? And that's some that's been choreographed and designed on how to make it happen, and some of that has just been the wild, wild west of people trying to really just remain present and relevant. So you've got a pretty significant variation in the gradation of the quality of what you're seeing. So I think one of the things that people just need to be more cautious of, and I think that people need to be more selective. I believe that the interest that gets drummed up is through free content. Actually, people love that, and if we started charging too much for all this stuff, people are going to start just gravitating towards the free stuff. That's the nature of what happens. That being said, I think we're going to find a balance where people are going to be a lot more comfortable paying $5-6 for something the way you would when you rent a movie on Netflix or any other platform like that, for something that may you've not seen before, but you want that opportunity. And I think that's where we want to start developing this parallel track. But it also, I think, has to still maintain free content, because I think that's what's going to draw people to the platform to begin with. If we had to pay for everything right out of the bat, we wouldn't be doing it. We're drawn to it because it's probably free and probably in some ways a snippet long enough just to keep our attention and draw us into something else. How do we dovetail that into teaching people about opera, getting people hooked on opera, and hopefully translating that into something that will get them in the actual opera house? No matter what, I mean, I think that what's happening now is that through this deluge of content all online, people still are having a longing for live music. And that's not going to change. In fact, I think it may even get more sweet as time goes on. And we have to remind people, I think it's the duty of the general directors, the opera companies, and the singers themselves to remind everybody that, you know, what you experience in an opera house is so different with a live audience, with a live orchestra, and experiencing live singing that's unamplified. I mean, there's nothing quite like that energy. And as we start reminding people that has to be, it's one of the key ingredients of our art form, I think that will help. I think it really will help.
I think it's a great point. A lot of the online stuff is now should be to keep the direction and to get people interested in opera, to get people wanting to come back to the theater when we're open, to have, you know, to be excited about that. And it's a great thing to have. But you as a general director and a casting director, do you like, if knowing that you can't have live auditions, you can't have people come to Dallas, or you can't go to New York or hear people sing, do you listen to some of the content that people put out there and be like, oh, I've never heard this person, they put up a video, I'm going to listen to hear it? I'm curious, just so people can judge, like, you know what, if something's not finished, maybe I shouldn't put it online, and because you never know who's listening.
Well, absolutely. I listen to a lot of stuff, and I love to do that, and I love to see people be adventurous. But I'm also just putting it through the filter of the reality of what we're in. Not everybody comes to the table with the same kind of technical equipment. Not everybody comes to the table with the same opportunity to be able to showcase themselves in the best of light. But I think there's a degree of grace and forgiveness you have to give to anything that's live and online right now. But to me, it's the thing that will never answer is, what does that voice actually sound like live and in the hall? And I'd have to just say, all right, I have to hear this person live at some point to see what that's like. Because as much as you can pick up on resonance, you can pick up on a lot of things, language, obviously, you can't really accurately really forecast what that voice is going to sound like in your particular hall.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I've been thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, like, people can always sound great online, but you still have to hear them in the hall. You still have to hear what they sound like. I mean, because everyone sounds like Franco Corelli online.
Yeah.
Not everyone. Believe me, not everyone.
You know, I had a question with respect to this. I mean, obviously, every time I've sung for you has literally been either in your opera house or live. I literally have never sent you a recording, and I've been blessed to do a few productions with you. Do you feel, though, that what is the challenge of promoting an art form whose kind of appeal is that it's live and that it's so organic, but the only way to advertise it is electronic and digital, right? Our whole appeal is like, that's the real voice. And I've told this story. I think I told this story when Morris Robinson was with us, that Jess and I went to go see I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I say that every show. We went to go see live pro wrestling, and one of the wrestlers turned to the audience and yelled. And I realized it was the first time that I'd ever heard his voice not through a microphone. And that's what I remember most, is like, that's that connection. That's the organic connection. And that's what I think is operatic, is that organic connection, is that there is no processing. There is no digital mixing or anything like that. What are the challenges of advertising that kind of art form that you literally, by definition, cannot recreate?
That is a fabulous question. And I wish I'd been asked this question before. That is a great question. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, Gideon. I mean, the question is, how do we convince people to really understand and believe that their experience in the house is going to be so much better than what they've grown accustomed to listening wise? And I think that you have to experience it for yourself, and I think that's the way marketing has to be. It's experience the thrill for yourself, because I don't know about you guys, but I was taken to the opera when I was young, and I experienced it through somebody that loved it and told me about it in the beginning. And I had heard recordings. I had heard opera on the radio, or my parents played it, but I never really got it until I was around somebody making that sound, and I couldn't believe how huge it was and how it carried through the whole place. There are people that still come to the opera nowadays that are assuming that every singer is micro.
I've been asked every time, every production I've been asked that question. Are you Mike?
I have to break it down to them, and I have to say, no, this is the Olympics of singing. These are Olympian athletes. They are doing things that you can't fathom to be able to do. And they said, well, how do they do it? And I said, well, there's that old story about, well, if you go to a sporting event and somebody's got a baby, and you hear that baby cry across the whole stadium, you can hear a baby cry across the whole stadium. There's no question. Yeah. I said, it's the same thing. It's controlled screaming in some ways. And there's a lot to it. And that actually, once people realize that it's a feat of human capability and engineering, that really seems to pique the interest a little bit more.
Well, it's funny. I was camping a couple of weeks ago, and I was with my cousin and some of his friends. We were playing some recordings, and my cousin played him a recording I did, and just the sheer, like, the thrill of hearing someone sing high notes, or someone singing with natural voice and being able to get like squealo and sound, and that was just, it blew his mind completely. And since then, he's been texting me with, like, asking me about opera. And I kid you not, he's probably listened to 2 weeks full of just opera music, just because of that one moment. And I agree with you 100%. That is when you're in a theater, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing more exciting than hearing a person sing over 80 orchestra players and just really capturing you with their voice. And you're right. That's what's going to keep people coming back to the opera house, and that's what's going to keep people wanting live theater. Do you see in the future maybe companies? I'm not saying your company. I'm not asking you to give us any inside information, but do you see companies maybe streaming more operas either via from people's homes, or maybe just getting casts together in a theater and streaming it that way without audiences? Which way do you see it going?
I think there's no reason we won't see a lot more streaming. And I think that's the creative impetus right now. And what really, I think one of the interesting things to me is that opera, as you guys know, takes a long time to plan. You're contracted years in advance. And there are many things that have to come together in order for everybody to show up on day one, and everything to happen so that you can open on time. And that is not conducive to being nimble, and is not conducive to being responsive to any number of changes that happen. And the digital world opens up a whole new stage and a whole new timeline associated with being able to produce on that stage. And so that, to me, is very exciting. I think that there are ways that we can start, whether it's through commissions, through new works, through new operas, or re-envisioning standard works and how we want to do things, start designing for the digital stage too. I mean, I've said before that, a Mall and the Night Visitors, Menotti would compose something for TV, and it started on TV and eventually became stage productions. It's not unlike that now. We can envision things that are designed to be digital products first that can be converted to stage products later. It's a lot easier to go from that small screen to the stage than to the stage to the small screen in a lot of ways.
Wow. Do you think all these HD operas, and you've done it too in Dallas when you would air something outside in the
simulcast?
We did it in the parks.
Do you find that helped you to navigate this field a little better, having done that for the past couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, I think we were well positioned because we we kind of know what the elements are to put something like that together. But I think that too was a simulcast of one performance, and so it was simulcast just to one specific area. Streaming is a similar thing, obviously, but there's more subtleties that you want to do with that as well. And I think that is going to test the capabilities of opera companies as well, being able to produce more for streaming content. But I also believe that there's no reason that it has to be limited to the performance itself. The streaming could actually be in elements of the red carpet beforehand. It could be the green room afterwards, and these kinds of things that allow people to connect with artists in a way that they weren't able to. And I think that is what I'm looking at when we're talking about ways to dovetail the digital product with the traditional product.
Sure. Do you see potentially maybe even streaming rehearsal processes, like watching them work it out with the directors? And
I don't know. We'd have to build in a pretty large sensor bleep on anything, I think.
It's a whole new contract. Yeah.
With us in rehearsal, Stephen, they would have to mute the whole thing. Come on, man.
Yeah, right. And then you'll get the singers that I'm going to mark all day today while the cameras are here.
Exactly.
That's right.
Ian, I wanted to show you something that the Michigan Opera, Detroit Opera House has done, and I wanted to get your view on this. So what they've done here, and you can see on your screen here, what they've done here, I don't know if you can see, is that they have made a whole deck on top of their normal audience. And as such, they've allowed, now this particular event wasn't the most socially distanced thing, and we're seeing the time lapse of them doing it. But do you think this might be a temporary fix, right? So they put platforms over everything, and then they just set up sort of socially distanced tables. Of course, you're going to see an audience come in that's not socially distanced. I'm not quite sure when this was taken, but do you think this might be a quick solution as opposed to the sort of taping off of seats here and there, to make room for that? But here you have like an ability to put a platform over the audience as it is now, and then space the audience out as necessary. What do you think of that, Ian?
Well, opera companies have been doing this a long time for special events. And I would say that most companies that do it in auditoriums where they either own the entire auditorium or have a large block of time in there for that. It obviously commits you to being in that setup for quite some time, and it defines then that you are significantly reducing all of your capacity for your seats. So you have to do it deliberately. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an interesting idea, and I know that several theaters in Europe have done that too. Build out over across, and then have the boxes be the actual spectator areas. It's not something that you would, in our situation, would want to do for one production. You would want to do it for a lot because of the immense amount of investment in either resources or manpower to actually get the thing converted. It takes many days to do that and to undo it.
Interesting. Do you maybe you can shed some? I read an article recently that the Dallas Symphony is going back in September. How is that? I don't know if you talk with the symphony, or how is that with their subscribers? Are they getting a good amount of ticket sales sold, or?
Well, I can't speak to tickets right now, but what I know is that they've converted some of their repertoire to smaller repertoire and changed the stage setup. So much like you're describing there, Gideon, what they are going to do is build out over the audience for a good portion of it, so that there's much more room on the stage. But I think the capacity that they will have is somewhere between 50 and 75 audience each single performance. So I know they have a lot of subscribers, so that's not going to fit everybody into everything there. But there you go. You've got exactly that kind of built out stage. And
Ian, we're a very high tech operation here. I mean, we're
it's
on
impressive,
top of
my friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I think that the in a lot of ways symphonies have an easier road because they don't have singers, and they can certainly put plexiglass things between for screening and all that depend that as well. It's not so easy to scale down an opera. It's possible, but it's not so easy to scale down an opera. You know, they also will be only performing, I think, around an hour's long program.
Yes,
No,
8-hour performance, no intermission. Yeah,
yeah. Not exactly conducive to opera, but there have to be some substantial cuts.
Do you see in the future, maybe like when opera companies are doing productions back to back, you may see more of the same singers in both productions, because it may be harder to bring singers from all over the place if there are quarantine rules, if you're afraid of people coming in and out of the city. Do you find that you're going to end up almost having to do like an NBA or type situation where you want to keep a bubble of singers around to maybe do one or two productions, or is that not been talked about at all?
Well, I mean, that's I don't know that that's the reason, but I mean, look at what Atlanta's doing. They're creating kind of an ensemble. It's almost like a fest, and that makes a lot of sense. For us, you know, the bubble idea is take for example a dance troupe that is 10, 15 people. They can rehearse. They can all go to one hotel and they can rehearse there and in a rehearsal space, and then they all just go back to the hotel. So they literally are in a bubble, and then they stay in that bubble essentially, and they travel, bus, whatever it is, to location, and they maintain that bubble. Opera companies, it's a much harder thing, as you guys know. If you were to do that with a certain degree of principles, that's one thing, but if we don't have a full-time chorus and orchestra in the Dallas Opera, they're hired part-time. Many of them have other jobs. They could not be encompassed in that bubble unless there was great expense, and that's one of the challenges that you have with that. Not to mention stagehands. You know, these individuals, in order to maintain a bubble, it's incredibly challenging.
Yeah, that's one thing. COVID has done is given opera even more expenses.
Yeah. So, Ian, speaking of expensive, this story sort of made the waves, and my phone couldn't stop blowing up here with this respect. La Scala asked artists to take a 10% fee. 10% pay cut, for their fees.
Yeah, that's a very misleading article. You said that the other day, and the headline is extremely misleading. La Scala cuts artist fees. They didn't cut artist fees. They asked,
but my question is that sort of what is the legality of that with respect to AGMA, and is that a thing? You know, is that where we're headed, that we're going to need to cut costs, and that's what's going to be asked of singers?
Well, I can't really speak to other companies at all what the cost structure is, but I do know that, you know, we are a company that has had our own set of cutbacks in the past year alone. Much of my staff has already taken salary reductions. There have been layoffs and furloughs, and Maestro Vioma and I have taken a voluntary salary cut along the way, hoping to mitigate some of the expenses for everyone else too. I don't know that the answer is going back and asking. I mean, artists are rates are what they are for better or for worse in a lot of ways. But it's going forward. What can companies sustain, and what is the viability of that?
I think I agree. As an artist, I've been asked by companies in the past have taken pay cuts because of budget problems, and of course, you know, this isn't, in some aspects, COVID isn't like that, where you're going from maybe a mismanagement issue. It's an issue that, again, you're raising money with no product, so of course you're going to have budget issues. And, you know, I think and I've never been forced by a company. I should say I've never been forced by a company that said, you're going to take a pay cut or you're not going to work here. That's never happened. Certainly has never happened in Dallas at all. And,
of course.
And you know, I think it's also right if for the singer if they want to sustain a career. I mean, meaning by you don't want to constantly keep forcing companies to have ridiculous expenditures just because you don't want to take a 10% pay cut. I feel like, it's not a lot. I've done it in certain instances. And if it helps the survival of the business, why not? I think, and in this case, it's not just the opera business. Like everyone says, oh, everyone gets so upset. Oh, they're asking me. And it's not that they're asking you for less because they don't want to pay you. I guarantee you. Ian, I know you're a great guy. People like you would not say, let's try to screw these people. No, and that's the one thing I keep trying to tell all my friends. No one is trying to screw anybody. We're all just trying to survive.
For the record, I'd be fine. I'm fine. I personally, and you can send me all the hate mail. This is not Representative Stephen. I'd be fine with that. We all are sort of trimming the fat and taking a pay cut. I'm just wondering if that was sort of what you think might have to happen. That was sort of what my question was.
Well, I think it is happening all across the board in every single aspect of opera. We're all looking to do things differently and for less money if we have to, just because of the things that you're mentioning, Stephen. I mean, it's fundraising is always a challenge, and it's even more so a challenge. And I never thought that something could be more time-consuming or all-encompassing than producing opera, but it turns out that not producing opera is even more challenging.
It's probably too hard during a pandemic. I mean, when you have tons of donors that love opera and want to support the arts, but there are tons of donors that also love life a little more. And if they can put more money towards finding a vaccine quicker to prolong that life, as of now, that's where a lot of people seem to want to put their money. And it's completely understandable. I mean, I personally would rather have the art survive than myself, but but it's completely understandable. I mean, I really don't envy your job at the moment. I think you do it great. I think you're great at it. However, I would not want to do it. So no competition over here.
I sure am not competing for either of your jobs.
Well, we don't have one, so you don't want one.
I know.
Yes. Stephen, Ian, I had a funny question for you. So the mayor of Moscow put out. So this is what we do on the show. We talk about sort of goofy stories.
Is this the? Are we going into? Do we give a shit now?
No, not yet. This is still music. Still music. We do have a segment, Ian, just so you know, called "Do We Give a Shit," where we talk about stories and we assess whether or not we actually give a shit about them, which is a rather popular segment. But in this particular this is actually music related. It might be "Do We Give a Shit," and that is that the mayor of Moscow says if you have a runny nose, you're not coming into our theater at all. This is a actual edict, an official edict that he has decided you can't have a runny nose and you cannot have a temperature above 98.6. Now, of course, the actual normal temperature goes above that. 98.6 is a rather antiquated measurement with respect to this. Is the Dallas Opera or do you believe it's absolutely absurd to not let people in if they have a runny nose, Ian?
I'm not subscribing to the runny nose prohibition at this point.
I have to be honest. Before COVID, I didn't want people in the rehearsal with a runny nose. Someone comes in with a runny nose. Why don't you just go home? Why don't you just go home? Or it's like, well, you have to go. No, they have a runny nose. I'm not getting close. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I lived my life that way, even before COVID. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So we can move on to some other stories if you'd like.
Do you have time? Would you like to play?
Yeah, Ian, do you like to stay and talk about
for a round? I've not played it, so I'm good for a round.
Oh, okay, all right. So the CEO of Spotify has told the artists, you know what? Maybe you should stop complaining and make some more music. Now, the CEO of HBO said that thanks to on-demand content, they've had to increase their content output by almost 15 times what they would normally do. Now, of course, Spotify has the same kind of thing, right? It's an on-demand content. And he says, shut up, just make some more albums. You can't make an album once every 3 or 4 years and expect to make some money. Ian, what do you think of this CEO of Spotify saying, make some more content?
I don't know the content is the answer right now. I think good content is the answer.
Well, a lot of Spotify artists complain that they're just sort of being underpaid with respect to streaming rates and the like, and he says you just need to put out more. Is that the case? Absolutely not.
I don't think more is always good.
I like that answer. Stephen, what do you think?
Coming from Spotify that pays their artists every stream like less than a cent. I mean, not even what was it recently a couple years ago when they started? It was Pharrell's "Happy" was streamed 44 million times, and they sent him a check for like $1,400.
I don't remember. I don't know that, but that's funny.
I think if their revenue sharing was a little better, people could actually get into the studio and make better content. So, I think they should just quit while they're ahead.
Well, here you go. Here's an interesting story that we've been talking about. So, of course, everyone on this show is naturally pro-mask, but NPR is reporting a big study that says that if you wear a mask, it's not just about you can't get the actual COVID or get a virus, but that if you do contract it, you will get it in a much milder form, because the reality is that your body sort of responds rather to viral load, right? So if you get in less to begin with, you will fare better if you actually contract the illness. So this is yet another study that says that masks are more helpful. Stephen, you seem skeptical.
I just don't think it makes any sense. I mean, I figure, like, if they're telling you can get COVID from touching a table or
well, no, they sort of walked that one back though, didn't they?
But still, I here's the thing. I feel like you said, Ian, better content is better than no content. Is just as good as no content at all, right? If you can't come out with something better, then don't come out with it till you can, right? I feel like that's what they should be doing in the CDC, the WHO. I think someone should come out and be like, you know what? We just don't know. We don't know. Instead of coming out with something one day and then walking it back another day, then coming out with it another day, they should just be like, look, we don't know.
And
then
Ian, what do you think?
Give it to us.
I like Leah's answer.
You recognize which Leah this is, I'm assuming.
I sure do.
Oh, good.
I sure do. It's good to see you, Leah.
Yes.
I don't know. I think just wear a mask, and if you think it makes it better, wear two. I don't care.
I don't get it. Some people go out and they wear like loads and loads of clothing, but all of a sudden they can't wear a mask. It's like, wow.
No, that I certainly don't get. Well, we can go through in a number of different directions. I'm going to see if I can stick with something music related.
I'm good for about 2 more minutes, gentlemen.
2 more minutes. Okay, 2 more minutes. Okay, let's see what I got that might be fun for 2 more minutes. Okay. Oh, this is. You know what? I think this is going to be good with Ian. So we Ian, of course, being a former singer, English National Opera has announced an initiative, and that is that they're calling it ENO Breathe, in which they are presenting forums, seminars, etc., all the like, with respect to how learning how to breathe properly as a singer is effective, period, but certainly versus COVID. This is a nice thing that opera maybe can teach the world. What do you think, Ian?
Actually, I'd be more interested in it as a meditative technique.
Oh, that too?
I mean, that's the thing I think most people need as much of anything else, is just to be able to breathe and not breathe on Zoom or virtually or anything like that. I mean, most of the classes offered would be virtual, but it does teach a sort of a classical vocal technique to help people, and of course there's undeniable science with respect to how efficient singers use oxygen or process oxygen rather, and this is doing it with respect to COVID as well, that learn to breathe the right way and you will fare better. Interesting. I'm not going to say. That's what ENO says. This is ENO. Stephen, what do you think?
I honestly don't give a shit. I think there's a lot of singers that don't know how to breathe. So I'm just,
That's true too. But I mean, that's true too. That's true, but,
no, I don't give a shit. Before we go on, Ian,
Yes.
we'll let you go because I know you have to go.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Ian, so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank
you. It's great to have you. I hope you had a good time. I hope we didn't scare you away. Maybe you'll come on again and join us.
It was a great pleasure. It's good to see you both, and keep
You
singing
too.
beautifully.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, moving on. We have some stories that we need to cover here, Stephen. And it's good. Oh, what is that? What is that you're drinking? We didn't talk about this. What is that you're drinking?
Well, I just had a soda here, but I was drinking Johnny Walker.
Oh, yes, I did sample some of that. Okay, so this is good. It's actually really good that Ian left just right now. Okay, so there's always a big balance between whether or not you're talking trash or whether or not you're just being gaudy, right? So I want to show you the victory celebration of one Valerie Laredo, right? Valerie Laredo is a fine MMA fighter who had a great showing. For people who are a little squeamish about combat sports, you might want to close your eyes for the next 10 seconds. But nonetheless, let's take a look at what Valerie Laredo did. No, don't worry about what she looks like. I'm trying to find the actual fight here. Okay, here we go. You tell me, Steven. So there's the big knockout, right? She knocks her out like a absolute monster, gets off of her, and then what does she start to do? Well, you know what? I'm excited. I'm a cute girl, and I'm going to start dancing. I'm going to really start dancing. And there she goes. And there she goes. She doesn't care. She's just going to keep on dancing. And she's going to keep on dancing. Steven, is this gaudy or is this great?
I mean, I don't know. Doesn't it happen in football all the time? Don't people like score a touchdown? Even even if they're they're losing 35 to nothing, and they finally score one touchdown. It's like people do a celebration dance. Like, look, we did it. It's like, I don't know. It's for me, it's very unsportsmanlike. I don't know. I think it's
okay. So you don't like
you've already won. You've won. You've gotten there. That should be enough. I mean, celebrate later when you go home. I
don't know. That's tough, because I think to have a champion who, when we think of female fighters, we maybe unfairly have a view of them that is not quite as traditionally effeminate as they may normally be. And here you have this beautiful Latina who's like, you know what? I don't care. I just knocked you out, and I'm going to shake my tojas, is basically what she just said. So I do give a shit. I think that's great. Good for her. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'm not.
It was a great knockout too, by the way. It was a great knockout too, but that's it. But we're talking about a different thing. All right, so here's another story. Unfortunately, the Big Ten has decided that that they are going to. Oh, I messed that up. My apologies. The Big Ten has decided that they are going to cancel their season for the year. Stephen, this is not good. This sucks.
I they finally decided to cancel for the year. I heard they were going to try to bring it back in the spring if possible, but I heard. It does kind of suck. It just, you look for these things during these periods. We have to have something. We can't keep watching the same bullshit content that we watch all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it's beyond that because the players themselves got a hashtag trending last night. It was hashtag Let Us Play. They want to play. A lot of them come from poor neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods. They go to a college campus. They're in a bubble. They get everything that they need. Their risk of infection is much lower because they're all together. It's a really sad time for these college athletes. They're not technically kids, but they're kids, and I hope they can. I hope that they can come up.
You're right, and like I said, a lot of these college athletes go on to hopefully play professional sports. That's their goal. That's why they go to college. That's why that's why they pick these schools to go to to perform their best, and now your years are getting cut shorter and shorter, so they have a smaller window, but you're still getting college education. So I get it, but your window to shine is getting a little smaller. It's unfortunate.
No, it is. And our last story for tonight, I think, should be: is it TikTok for TikTok? And that is that after all the announcements about any sort of restriction on TikTok, they've started to dole out $1 billion bonuses to creators of TikTok. Now, I prepared the story for the last show, but I just wanted to let people know what TikTok actually does. Now, a computer scientist reverse engineered TikTok, and these are some of the things that it does, unlike Facebook and Instagram. It hijacks a user's phone and hardware, so it can tell what CPU type, number of cores, hardware ID, screen dimensions, etc., disk space that you have. It accesses all of your network information. It sets up a local proxy server on the user's device. And this is the craziest thing that it does. It copies whatever on your clipboard, right? So when you cut and paste, someone's text or an article or a piece of an article that you saw, every 15 to 30 seconds that the app is running in the background. This is not a joke. And it goes right to the Chinese Communist Party. This is a serious security breach. What do you think about TikTok? Should it go?
I've never watched a TikTok video. If it's an app, I've never downloaded it. I've never seen one. I'm proud to say that because I just have no interest in it. I have no interest in it. And I got to be honest, people.
But it's very popular. It's apparently like 50% of all teenagers in this country have it on their phones.
Yeah, but you know what? Shouldn't you? I mean, before you download something, before you put something, shouldn't you read? Shouldn't you know a little bit about it? Why do people just download things these days?
They don't think about that. They don't care.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
No,
that's the problem. People don't look into stuff anymore before they do it. They do it, and then when they realize, oh my God, look what happened. It's like, how did that happen? Well, if you just read it, if you read the user agreement, you would understand. But people don't do it. And then, I mean, yeah, I think it should go. I think anything like that should go. I'm against any kind of spyware tracing in your phones at all. I use a Apple phone because I have to, but I'm sure they locate you. I mean, it's like the same things. Like, how many times do you talk about something on the phone to someone? Then 2 minutes later, when you get off, you're seeing ads for it on Facebook every 5 minutes.
So I will say this. So I have a cousin who works for Instagram, and he insists very, very adamantly that your phone does not listen to you and that your phone does not do anything like that. And if it did, your phone would be like absolutely hot the whole time. He's quite adamant that you do not get it. Now, what you Google is a different story, but what you say, he insists that Instagram does not do that. I don't know. It's a little bit iffy.
It's all iffy. And of course he works for them, so he has to say that.
Well, I don't think he's lying. Maybe they're lying to him, though, right?
Who knows? I don't think we'll ever know the truth. I think we should all go back to flip phones.
I agree. 100%. All right, Steven. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Great show today. Guys,
Yes.
thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week, same time, Monday, 6 p.m. Don't miss it.